So what I've enjoyed the most and taken the most of the last term in production journalism was the fact that we learned how a journal was created. I thought it was really interesting to see how it was created and why certain things were put that way. I also thought it was quite interesting when Daniel Harvey, he didn't came into our class, but we got to ask him all sorts of questions and kind of interview him. We got to see his path through becoming one of the journalists for one of the biggest broadcasters in the UK. The fact that we could ask him all sorts of questions was really interesting as well. And I also really enjoyed learning how to use Adobe InDesign. I thought it was quite creative and it's something we can take out and use it in a professional word. So I thought it was really interesting and quite creative.
For me personally, I'd say what I've taken the most from the first term is structure and structuring what I'm writing and different types of journalism that I intend to write. So, for example, these could be like images and how you would put those onto a page or a magazine, a newspaper, and then the captions below it. I mean, these are all things that I've seen before in newspapers, but I didn't realise the kind of exact formality of the structure depending on whether it's a newspaper in particular or then with magazines. Obviously, it can be more creative. So yeah, I'd say I've particularly enjoyed that side of it, and kind of with my personal task on the coursework on InDesign, I've enjoyed like the creativity of playing around very much with the ideas and structures and themes to get the message and the news across that I want to deliver in the right way, which I did as a newspaper, but wanted to make it a more creative type rather than just, a bog standard kind of black and white newspaper. But yeah, also I've learned very much the simplicity of getting your comment across to the reader, because as much as you could be extravagant with your language, you want to keep it clear and your point very clear, so there's not really many questions on what you're trying to report or what you're trying to get across as your message. So yeah, all very much things that I thought I had an idea on before, but now I've kind of been able to build on that and get a better idea of how to best kind of put a piece of journalism out there in a way that's best for the reader.
So over these last, what was it, 2 months in this module, I would say I've taken away a lot with what could be useful in the future. For instance, doing all these subbing tasks, news editing values, or just in general, doing this whole task of building up the portfolio, I thought really helped a lot, because it shows you how versatile you need to be within this industry by doing different things. So that was my biggest takeaway from this module. And also from our guest speaker, Daniel Henry, him showing what he went through, like letting him know about his experiences and everything, was also very enlightening. And that's what I also took away. So yeah, overall, I'm very happy with what I've learned so far.
In term one of Hung's module, I feel like I've taken away quite a lot of what can be useful for journalism in the future. For instance, I feel like the coursework has been the most helpful, just building that sort of portfolio of like the different exercises. For instance, the subbing one, I found I liked a lot. I did the sports one, and yeah, just like writing that sort of sports article, I felt was quite good and really helpful. Also the InDesign task, I feel like to get to know how to use an app like that is only going to help us in the future. And yeah, I also liked when we had a guest speaker. I think his name was Daniel Hendry. He came in and spoke to the whole class, where we could ask him questions, and it was good to have someone from that field come in, that sort of lived the life as a journalist, and obviously there's no better person to talk to about it. And yeah, he gave us some good advice, talked about his journey and all that, and yeah.
In term 1 of Hung's module, I have managed to learn a lot. For example, the amount of people that a writer has to go through before publishing their work and how many checks they have to go through, which was very interesting to know, because when I would read a newspaper or a magazine, I'd be like, oh yeah, they just wrote it and published it, which is not the case. We also got to learn how to use InDesign, which is an Adobe program that I did not know how to use. And I liked getting to know Adobe as well, and like the whole Adobe task, because we got to be so creative with it, and we finally got to go down the routes of like sports journalism or music journalism. And obviously I went down the route of music journalism, and I got to write about my friend who's a musician, and that was very fun because I got to get creative with like the layout and the way I was writing it, and I got to take inspiration from my favourite music magazines as well. Also, Hung brought in a speaker for us that we got to ask journalism related questions to and see how it is for somebody who is already in that field of work, which is very helpful. And obviously we get to speak to somebody who is in the industry, which is nice. I also think that the fact that Hung has given us tasks which will help us build up our portfolio is very helpful, because yes, we're doing university work, but at the same time we're building up our portfolios, which is very useful. And yeah, I'd say I enjoyed Hung's module for term 1, and I'm excited to see what we do in term 2.
So far, in term 1 of Hung's module, I've learned a lot about production journalism, in particular the basics of journalism, the fundamentals, so like subbing, news values, and what it's like to be a production journalist. I learned that there's a lot of stuff as a reader we don't see behind the scenes. For example, the amount of people you have to go through to clear your paper, to see the legal rights, etc. I've really enjoyed in particular learning about the InDesign, which we've done towards the last 2 weeks, because this is like my field of journalism, so it was very, very good for me to see what it's like. I also like the guest speaker who came on speaking from a journalist perspective about his experiences, as that's someone I aim to be in the future. And yeah, I look forward to term 2. Thank you, lads.
So for the past 2 months while studying underneath Hung, I've been able to, how would I put this in the best way? I've been able to strengthen my journalism skills through what he's taught us and through the speakers that he's brought in to give us a little bit of an insight or help us out with a bit of the coursework, CW1, that he presented to us. So one of the main tasks that I really enjoyed, actually the 2 main tasks that I really enjoyed while studying underneath Hung, was the InDesign task for one, because I feel like I'm a practical person sometimes. I like being on software, I like being on apps where I'm able to use my imagination a bit, move around the images and writing and kind of be creative and have a little bit of freedom. And InDesign was able to give me that. I mean, I was able to focus on sports, I focused on Arsenal, I was able to understand how the software was used, ask questions to the speaker that came in, while also seeking help from Hung when it came to the grids and starting up the program. Another exercise that I really enjoyed was the subbing exercise. I feel as if the subbing exercise explained more about the writing structure, and I feel like that's very important because we're just starting journalism, and this is my first time ever studying journalism. The structure wasn't there. I didn't understand the key structure of how everything was meant to be laid out. But when reading what Hung gave us, and us having to put the headlines, having to put the crossheads, having to put the byline, the quotes, it just gave me such a better understanding.
So this module has been good for me because I've learned quite a lot. Subbing was a good thing that I learned because it would definitely be useful in writing up reports and taking out information from things. Also, being able to write my own like articles using the exercises from the second week was pretty good. Being able to use InDesign was one of my favorite things too, because it allowed me to understand it more in depth. Like, I found it hard at first, but it became easier as I started to like learn how to use each thing and did some of the exercises. And the image exercises helped me to be able to take better photos and be able to tell a story through pictures, which helped me a lot and will definitely be used in the future.